Hello, welcome to the second deck we're going to talk about on the article series, Stay on Target. This time we're going to talk about a hero deck, and I've got it up on the screen here, so I'm going to quickly talk through the deck. Then we'll do a couple of mulligan hands and think about our first turn, and later we'll try to get some games in and look at those as well. So the deck consists of 3 characters this time instead of 2 like the last article. We've got Rey, Qui-Gon, and the Rebel Trooper. Those come in at 9 points, 13 points, and 8 points, so you're under your 30-point restriction. And then let's take a look at the characters themselves. Rey has 2 melee faces, 2 resource, and 1 discard, and she's got a couple modifier faces, so it can be tricky to get her damage off. Qui-Gon's pretty standard. He's got no modified or costly faces, and it's 2 melee, 2 shields, and a resource. And then the Rebel Trooper has the lowest health and the lowest cost, but has 3 damage faces and only 1's modified, and then a shield and a resource. So he has the ability Guardian, so we can try to use the Rebel Trooper to keep Rey and Qui-Gon alive as long as possible by stealing our opponent's optimal damage spread. Rey has the ability from the starter set, so after you play an upgrade on this character, you may take 1 additional action, so we'll take advantage of that. And then Qui-Gon says, before this character gains 1 or more shields, you may remove a shield to deal 1 damage to a character. So this deck's going to be all about shields and dishing out damage. So since we're all about shields, the battlefield I've selected for now is Echo Base. There's a couple other selections we'll talk about in the article, but this one just gives a character a shield. So if we get to claim and we already have a shield on Qui-Gon, we can rewrite this as deal 1 damage, which seems pretty good. So let's look through the deck at this point. We've got a ton of events up here in the top row, as you can see, but we'll look through them a little bit at a time. So the first 6 events up here, we've got 2 copies of Dug In, 2 copies of Defensive Stance, and 2 copies of Take Cover. So total, those 6 cards have a cost of 4 resources, and Dugout can give out 3 shields to characters as you wish if you control the battlefield, so it works when you claim and things like that on the next turn. But Defensive Stance gives out 2 shields, and Take Cover is 0 but gives out 1 shield. So total right there we have 12 shields to dish out for 4 resources, so lots of shielding to support Qui-Gon and the Rebel Trooper with his shield. We've got 2 copies of Riptos, which are pretty convenient events for this sort of deck, so you can remove any number of shields from one of your characters and then deal that much damage equal to the number of shields you just removed. We want to keep our characters alive as long as possible, so we've got 2 healing events. One is Willpower, move 1 damage from one of your exhausted characters to an opponent's exhausted character. So this gets around shields they might claim from our Echo Base, and also keeps our Qui-Gon Trooper and Rey alive longer. The other is just Field Medic, which heals 2 from the character. It's kind of equivalent to Defensive Stance, only it's reactive, but being able to heal damage off our Trooper after we unoptimally spread it can be really powerful. We've got 4 events over here in our sort of control-y pool. We've got 2 copies of Deflect. I've been seeing a lot of range damage recently, and with 2 blue characters, it seems really convenient to be able to not just remove a range damage, but then deal it. We've got 1 copy of Flank, and I think I'm going to change that impromptuvely. I'm going to get rid of Use the Force and take an extra copy of Flank. With 3 characters, you really want to have 2 copies of Flank in almost every deck you're running. You rarely are activating before all your characters before them, so being able to remove any dice of your choice for 1 can be really powerful. I've got 1 copy of Force Protection. Some people run 2 of this. I found it's pretty expensive, and yeah, it gives you shields for Qui-Gon, but it doesn't dish enough damage and get us to our goal enough to justify the more than 1 copy of the 3 costs. I've got 2 copies of Survival Gear and 1 copy of Jedi Robes. Let's move those closer together since we're going to talk about them. I've seen a lot of people run multiple copies of Jedi Robes with Qui-Gon, but when you have access to red cards, I really think this Survival Gear suits you much better. It's got no blank side, which is great, and it's still got the 2 resource sides, but it's also got 2 shielding sides, where Jedi Robes can give you 1 or 2 shields when you play it, and you can do some tricky things like discarding it and returning it to your hand using the battlefield. But for the most part, you're getting those initial 1 or 2 shields and then some focus and disrupt. Here, for the same cost, we can get shields every time we roll this thing, and almost every side on this is one that we want to see. Melee damage that's unmodified will help us trigger lightsabers and things like that better, or raise melee damage. Focus is great, just like it was on the robes. You've got a 1 and a 2 shield aside, and then your 2 resources. So nothing's blank on it. So it's a really good card. It just usually doesn't get used in a lot of blue decks. We've got 1 copy of Resistance Headquarters and 1 copy of It Binds All Things. I'm not sure if I'll keep this or not. You've got a couple blue upgrades. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 upgrades. So it's a card that's reducing 8 cards in your deck, but if you don't see it early, it's really kind of just a dead card in your deck. I've got 2 copies of Force Throw. This is kind of pretty control-y, but we've got 2 Jedi we can throw it on. It's got 5 pretty good sides. Disrupting right away can be pretty painful. And that special side, to remove a die and deal damage to a character equal to its value, can really save you. Even if you're just removing like a special that's about to off one of your characters with unblockable damage, Force Throw can be a pretty powerful card. Unlike the last deck, I've actually got some legendaries in this deck. So I have 1 copy of One with the Force, which is usually played on Array or as early as we can get it out. Every side in this, again, is pretty useful. The 2 and 3 focus really lets you set yourself up to just destroy things in the next action. We got 1 copy of Luke Skywalker's Lightsaber. I didn't include 2 copies, even though normally I'd like to, just for consistency, because I don't want to make a deck that a lot of people don't have access to the cards for. But this card's got a lot of good sides. It's got a 2 shield side, and then it's got its special, which lets you apply shields or unblockable damage. So pretty versatile. Unmodified resource, and then 2 3 damage sides. I put 2 copies of the regular lightsaber in there. It's very similar to Luke's lightsaber, but a little toned down. It only does unblockable damage and things, but it has redeploy, so hopefully we'll be able to get those out pretty early. And then this is my niche card. I have 2 copies of Scout in my deck. Doesn't seem like it really fits the deck, so it might be something you want to consider dropping, but it's a really powerful card, and if you're going to include something for 1 cost, I know a lot of people include Datapad early on for its ability, and then eventually they replace it with something better. And I think Scout's a very similar card. If you can get 2 Scouts in your opening hand and spend both resources playing them on Ray and then Activator, if you get the special on both of the Scouts, you can discard some really powerful stuff that your opponent probably kept from their mulligan. So it's a really powerful opening hand card, and if it lets you play a Force Throw the next turn for 2 so you don't have to worry about saving up, it can be worth it. As the card pool expands, we can probably find some more things that are Shield or Guardian related to go into the deck. But for now, we've left in 2 Scouts. Alright, so I'm going to place my battlefield over here and group up my deck. We'll flip it over and give her a couple shuffles. And, oh, let's put those cards there. We'll move it onto the deck slot. Pretend we're playing our first turn, take our 2 resources. One thing we can do quick is we can just look at a couple rolls from our starting characters. With only 3 characters, there's a good chance that you might not always win your battlefield. But even here, we've got a 5, right? 5 is a pretty legitimate roll. All of your characters have at least 1 2 side. Qui-Gon's got 2, so he's pretty helpful. Not as good as Grievous was last game at securing our battlefield, but we'll do 1 more roll to see what we get on the second one. So we had 5, and now we've got something much lower, 2. So one thing you'll want to keep in mind is you're not always going to get your battlefield with this deck. Alright, so we'll shuffle 1 more time, and then we'll draw 5 cards. Look at what we get here. Alright, so we've got a couple interesting options. You mulligan before you find out if you get the battlefield, so you may or may not want to keep Dug In at this point. Keeping Dug In could be pretty nice, because you can throw a lot of shields out really early. Depending on who your opponent is, you may want to keep Deflect and Flank, as they can keep you alive while you search for better things. I think for now, I'm going to throw away Luke's lightsaber, throw away Dug In, and assume that I'm going to keep a somewhat control-y feel. So I'm going to throw away Flank, too. Assume I'm playing a ranged deck. Shuffle, draw 3 more cards to complete our set. Alright, so we've now got our starting set. We drew Dug In again, a lightsaber, and a Scout. So often if I win, well first if I get shields, I'd obviously place both on Qui-Gon. It's the most important character to keep up there. And with my first action, I'll almost always play this Scout dice. We've now got 2 dice on Rey and 1 resource left. You could use your second action to deflect if they have some range damage out. They probably don't have anything activated yet at this point. So I would just go ahead and activate Rey, see what she comes up as. And even right here, you've just grabbed 3 resources. Once you grab these 2, you could play your Force Throw the next turn on Qui-Gon and really get things up and running. So we're going to put these cards back. We don't want to focus too much on just this one hand. We want to mulligan a couple hands, right, and see what kind of things we could get. Alright, so we're going to shuffle again, draw 5. Here's another interesting setup. So we can see we don't have a ton of... We got our lightsaber to play things with, but not a ton of stuff. Resistance Headquarters can be really brutal in this deck. I sort of think we want to keep that. And both these shield events are good, but we don't need to keep 2 shielding events right away. It binds all things there's only 1 copy of, so we'll probably definitely want to keep that. Getting a lightsaber and raid pretty early could be helpful, so we'll just mulligan 1 card and draw. Of course, oh, I forgot to shuffle it. Again. Shuffle, 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 and we'll draw. Not the same event, but more shields, alright. So in this first action, you'd probably play It Binds All Things. Very rarely are they going to be able to get rid of that support that early. You won't have enough money to play this lightsaber right away, which is kind of unfortunate, but you will be able to put a shield on Qui-Gon or onto Rey and keep her up. Maybe play Dug In. You could activate a character searching for those, too. I'd suggest activating Qui-Gon before the Trooper. You'll want to keep him for some nastiness later. But ultimately, you'll want to get this lightsaber onto Rey. One of the reasons Resistance Headquarters is so good, we can read it here quickly. So it says, exhaust this support and discard a card from your hand to give a character a shield. Then ready this support unless your opponent spends a resource. So if your opponent goes all out later and doesn't kill your Qui-Gon, but he has a shield on him already, maybe your opponent claims, you can just burn through your hand and treat this card as deal 4 damage to your opponent unless they can pay money. So if you can get rid of your opponent's money, this card can be pretty brutal, or if you catch him without money at some point, you can just start shelling out free damage with Qui-Gon. So there's only 1 copy of it in this deck. It might be better to include 2, but for now we've got 1. Alright, we'll do one more mulligan setup before we go ahead and look for an opponent later. We're going to shuffle, 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 draw 5 cards. Alright, so here we've got some interesting options. We've got Willpower early on, probably not so good, so we'll throw that back. And again, Riptos can be really powerful, but not needed right away. We've got some interesting options here. We'll probably play Scout on Rey, but Jedi Robes that first game can be pretty powerful too. You don't want to take less advantage of it later. So I think for now I'm going to throw Scout away. Search for some better events and things. Oops, not search. Draw. Draw. And we get Resistance Headquarters again, Willpower again, unfortunate, but Defensive Stance. So your first action, you're probably going to put Jedi Robes on Rey. You'll end up with 2 cards. You're not going to be super aggressive right away, but you will end up with 2 shields on Rey and 2 on Qui-Gon right away. You can use Take Cover to throw a 3rd shield on someone, because you've spent both your resources at this point. But you can kind of see what your mulligan strategies are. You want to have at least 1 upgrade to throw on Rey, and this deck, in my opinion, is pretty low on upgrades, so that can make it difficult. Those 1-cost upgrades are really important, so you're really looking for things like Scout, and if you kept a data pad or something like that. We haven't seen a survival gear yet, but if you got that, I would definitely throw it out there. I don't know if I'd throw it on Qui-Gon or Rey. Probably Rey, so you can go with her 2 damage modified side. But so yeah, that's the deck. Still coming up with the name for it before I write the article later, but hope you guys enjoy it, and now we'll go and look for some games here.